My oldest son, Josh, is on the Edward Little Nordic ski team. With COVID, Nordic racing is, of course, different this year than it has been in the past. The traditional schedule held practice on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, with Wednesdays and Saturdays as the race days. On these race days, the team and the team moms like myself would go and support our athletes by providing verbal encouragement, preparation, and of course, food. Lots and lots of food. Almost all of the Nordic racing was held in the beauty of Maine's mountains, where the cold air would seep into our bones, only relieved by the copious amounts of hot chocolate we would consume during the day. At one racing spot, the hosting mountain resort had a small 2-floor hut where Nordic racers and their supporters would prepare food and themselves for the upcoming day races. One of the important ways that skiers would ready themselves for the day's races was to wax their skis. This can be, as you might imagine, an interesting project and often needs one to pay attention as they heat and work the wax down on the skis. One day, while we were at this particular mountain resort in this 2-floored skiing hut, our team was on the first floor eating chili and gossiping about teachers and about homework and about all the different things that teenagers gossip about, when all of a sudden, the fire alarm went off, blaring throughout the whole building. And in response, our kids gathered all their coats, put them on, put their boots on, and went outside. And as we stood in the snow, we realized that on the second floor, the teams were waxing and the heat from their irons had accidentally set off the fire alarm. And at that moment, we also realized these teams were still on the second floor of the building while that fire alarm was screeching out on the side of the mountain. The mountain resort employees spoke over loudspeakers, and they asked these teams several times to leave the building. But to no avail. These second floor teams did not leave until they had gathered all of their ski equipment. And by all of their ski equipment, I mean all of it. The skis, the poles, the bags, etc. And at one point, with whiffs of burning wax emanating from the building, about 6 adults came out with a big wooden structure holding about 25 pairs of skis. Once out of the building, some of these same adults went back into the building to gather more of their team's expensive equipment. And all of this was happening while the staff of the resort and the fire department, when they showed up, told them not to do this. But these adults that were associated with these teams on the second floor, they did not listen to the authority figures around them. In essence, they completely ignored them. Well, not really even in essence. For these teams valued those expensive ski equipment pieces than paying attention to the safety rules meant to keep everyone, including themselves, safe and healthy. They were literally running into a situation that could have caused them and caused others harm. And listening to authority can be a challenge. Certainly we as Congregationalists, as well as Mainers, can perhaps appreciate the resistance in being told what to do and how to do it. We know what our opinions are, what our thoughts are, and where our values lie. And we don't want to be told otherwise. And I mean, in this world we live in, There are people who claim to have authority. There are people who, in truth, are the authority. But wading through all of this entangled, complicated weeds to find the center of truth is challenging. And I lift up, because of this, our culture, our people, us, have been holding a lot of stress and anxiety. And not only are people vying for our attention as to the place of authority over us, we also have a culture which tells us how to live and where our values should lie. We are too often led to hold importance over what kinds of material objects we own, what kind of car we drive, what kind of clothes we wear, how big our homes are, how big our bank accounts are. A culture held together by a facade which tells us human power is only held and is only found in wealth and in status. A culture which continually rewards behavior where expensive fancy skis are more important than humans, other humans, and ourselves. Because that day when the adults went back into the hut, thankfully no one was hurt, but also no one was held accountable for not following what they had been told to do. The fire department checked the hut, found everything okay, and all the teams and all their support systems went back into that space and went on with their day. The team who didn't listen to the authorities did well in the races and left with their athletes proud of their accomplishments that they had made throughout the day. A culture values authority and power to the extent that it doesn't matter who is at risk of being harmed as long as material wealth and material power is honored. So as we meander into our scripture this week, the one where Jesus' authority is claimed, in which character do we see ourselves? As we go into this scene, I invite you to imagine your place in this scene. And this moment in this scripture, folks are gathered for worship. And as they gather, they see a man who is in pain and believed to be possessed by an evil spirit. In the Roman world, evil spirits were seen as a physical manifestation that could only be healed by physicians. But here in the temple and worship, those of the Jewish faith understood that evil spirits were healed by rabbis. So as we are sitting in this scene, perhaps pretending to be one of these in-person observers, witnessing this man's pain, what does that feel like for you? What are you hoping the rabbis will be able to do for this man? For truly in this space, it is up to the authority of the rabbis to heal him. And rabbis are or were expected to follow a certain set of rules or specific liturgy in these cases. This is where the authority that rabbis had were found. It was the only way that rabbis held authority over evil spirits. And then in comes Jesus. This upstart who came in and using only himself, not any liturgy, not any physician, commanded the spirit to leave. And leave it did. My guess is there was a combination of confusion and gratitude over what had just been witnessed, over what had just been experienced. Jesus had not followed what was expected, and the authority in that space came directly from him, and only him. And as we think of this scene, maybe imagining ourselves as these fellow worshipers, ones who follow the rules of Sabbath, are possibly by confused. This man who was not following the right way to do church. Who are we as these fellow worshipers? Do we see ourselves as the priests who minister to others, following proper rules, and then becoming horrified by these upstarts? Are we the disciples who so often try to understand what Jesus was getting at, but end up super confused? Are we the man who was in need of healing? Or, I lift up this challenge, are we the spirit that was in that man? Now, it might be a bit of an insult to ask ourselves if we are the evil spirit. And you might think, Sarah, what on earth are you talking about? But bear with me. Bear with me. Because who on that faithful Sabbath day recognized the authority of Jesus? And who, according to this gospel, was the first moment that Jesus was publicly identified as having authority? And who in that space was the first one to recognize the authority of Jesus? Who was the one who first recognized who Jesus truly was? It was that spirit. Now, that spirit may not have been comfortable recognizing who Jesus was, but that spirit recognized the authority of Jesus. Now, in other Gospels, there are other defining moments of Jesus's first authoritative move or moment when it was revealed who he was. For example, in the Gospel of John, the first time Jesus made this move, or frankly was told by his mom to make this move, was when he turned water into wine. But here in this morning's scripture, it is the Spirit who follows the authority of Jesus, allowing for healing to occur. It is the Spirit who understands that Jesus, as the Son of God, has authority over all. So, I invite us all to ask ourselves, who are we in this story? Are we the ones who understand what Jesus means for us? Do we follow what Jesus told us to do? Do we listen to Jesus's authority? Who are we in this story? I lift up that so often Christians do not listen to the authority of Jesus. We as Christians, worldwide Christians, do not follow the lead of the one whose ministry reveals itself through our scriptures. The one who heals, who teaches, who spoke with women who have been cast out, who invited themselves over to the homes of men who were disliked, who listened to and learned from a mother pleading for help with her sick daughter. At first, he didn't want to help her, and then he listened to her and realized he was wrong, and he helped his daughter. This is the one who took time to engage in conversation with a woman who is sitting at his feet, learning how to be his disciple. This is a man who welcomed children to sit with him, even at the inconvenience of the adults who were gathered around. We as Christians do not often enough listen to the one who sacrificed, the one who spoke on God's behalf, the one who held authority. But the good news is that the times when we do listen to the authority of Jesus, when we move out of the way, healing happens. It can happen when we allow God to work through us, when we care for our neighbors, when we reach out to those who have been cast aside, when we talk to people that others consider less than, when we, like Jesus, are willing to listen and learn from mothers whose children are sick and dying, when we allow ourselves to listen to divine authority and not human power, when we as Christians across the globe embrace and listen to the good news, when we stop and realize we need to listen to Jesus as our authority. We need to listen to Jesus as the one who holds the greatest authority over this. Because the good news is when we do, we will not find ourselves running into situations that cause us and cause other harm. So I ask again to all of us, including myself, who are we in this story? Amen.